how to find a good supervisor or institute? Did you think that I would go somewhere and then do the PhD, or how did you find that topic as well as the institute and guide?
Should say I was lucky, but yeah, that's a good point, because some of my colleagues, when they did a postdoc, if you find a bad supervisor, it can be very bad for you, and that's for sure, because unfortunately there are too many. There are too many bad supervisors and people who don't care at all. I was very lucky because I knew him from. I liked conferences, so when I was a student, I was helping to organize international conferences, and I met Roland Frey, who also died very young, by the way, in the 50s, mid 50s. He was Swiss Canadian, but he was working in Amsterdam. So I liked his character also, because his ideas, he was a very bright person. So I knew him before I was going to a postdoc. So it was not something for me unknown. No? It was somebody that I knew. So I said, okay, I like this guy, so I want to go there. So I think this is very important when you choose for any young student to choose a new lab. If they need to know the person a little bit, otherwise they may be problems, especially if your character is not so strong. I mean, I know some cases that people really who are fighting in the lab, maybe you know it too as well, that they were not in a good place, or it does not need to be necessarily very famous guys. Sometimes the very famous guys can be very dangerous. It depends on also the person. You need to look at both sides of the coin. It's not. I think this is a very difficult choice. I should say very difficult. But in a way, if you are a young scholar, please try and write or call or visit the lab, and also ask the students, because the important an important way to know how the lab is operating is to ask the students working under the professor. They will tell you if they are happy or not, or what is the kind of atmosphere. I think this is very critical point. This is a critical point.
Actually, you have raised a very pertinent question, and I can tell you is that knowing the person with whom, or having a comfort level, is very much important. However, I mean, again, I would like to quote my supervisor, which somehow, what happens that when we apply abroad, we probably don't know. We just look at their profile and look at their lab and publications, and then we apply. In those time, perhaps we don't have a chance to know. But if we do masters with somebody, we will be knowing that, okay, that person is how is nature, and can I continue a PhD with that person. Would you like to advise that in that term, that if you are doing masters, you may continue it with the PhD, or PhD you can start with a new one? How people will know that what is the nature? Because by the time they enroll, it's done.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, well, also depends. I think it's important to know what do you want, what kind of, when you are in research, what kind of research do you want to do, because my background was analytical chemistry, so I could go to food analysis, to metals. So I decided to go to this area of contaminants and things like that. So it depends. If you see that the lab is very well known and your master is a follow-up, or if you like it, your master, you may continue with your master topic, or you may change. As I told you when I started,
Yeah.
I like, because I already started with this topic with contaminants. Well, in fact, at that time was an industrial process, but working with organic chemicals, organic contaminants. So I think it depends on the topic. Also, the topic may be important, because some people like more instrumentation, other people likes more field side, other people likes more computing, modeling. So I think it's also you need to know when you are a student, what are your skills also, which are your skills, because if you are better doing computing, better to go to modeling. Better go. My best friend is doing chemometrics. He's an excellent guy in chemometrics. He's one of the best. So don't ask him another to do something else. So I think it's also
Yeah,
important.
I mean, I really feel so. By knowing yourself is the first step.
Well, I think the choice that I made, because at that time I was starting with chromatography. Almost very few people doing chromatography at that time, and there were not many instruments. So I think that was very good. That was a good choice, and I selected also very good. My former supervisor, who also died, was from Sweden, by the way. and he died, but he was one of the first in Spain to do this, to do the technique. So I think that was a good choice. Of second one was when I selected to go to Amsterdam with Roland Frey. That was a very good choice because at that time Spain was not at the European Union, and in Holland, I mean, we were a little bit outside the EU. Well, we were outside the EU, so I learned also how to manage under the EU rules, and also to learn from a lab which was very, very well equipped and with a lot of American mentality, you know, US, a lot of people from US. It was full of foreigners. As you know, when you are in a very important lab, the people who are working are the foreigners. The locals, they don't work. So because basically they stop at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and they go at home, and all the other ones we work till midnight. So, but anyway, this was my two turning points. Of course, when I went back to Spain, I could start my group. Well, I was at that time Spain joined the EU, and I was able to get funding from the EU because I was attending meetings, and I got some reputation already from the beginning. I should say I was also lucky. You know, it's not only that sometimes is a point that you should be lucky also in life, or you take the opportunity when it comes to you. You know, when you see the something which is relevant. And I thought that okay, the European Union, because most of the funding in Spain, most of the main funding is coming through the European Union funding. Spanish funding is not so much. It's basic, but you can get something, of course, as students. But the main funding is the EU. So I think these are probably the choice of the PhD at the postdoc. And after that, when I returned to Spain, I got a permanent job, and then I could start after 3 or 4 years a small group, and then I started this. I think this was, but I should say that this was, of course, always includes a hard work. You know, you cannot stop working, as you know, because you did the same thing, I guess. So you know that you should never stop, and of course continue with a topic which I was also lucky with the topic because I started with LCMS. I was one of the pioneers doing LCMS, which now many people knows, but at that time few people knew in the 80s, mid 80s. There were a few labs doing this. So I was also lucky with the technique, I should say, because after that it was an explosion. You know, it was a big bombardment of this technique. Now is used for everything, for measuring
Yeah,
everything.
I mean, and nowadays, one change I have also seen, one thing is very much important is that being ahead or being on the time or ahead of the time at least is very much important. Trending research is important. We have to find that if there is a new instrument like chromatography that you have told, still it is working, still it is relevant. So catching on the tide and being on the surge is very much important. When did you get your first offer as editor? And whether you started with like assistant, the editorial board, associate editor, and then editor-in-chief. I mean, how was your experience or journey as an editor?
Well, my first journey was many years ago in the 90s. It was by chance in the Transanalytical Chemistry, which is a very good journal in analytical chemistry. The publisher wanted to do a volume on environmental analysis because it was mainly analytical chemistry, I don't know, food, clinical. And they said to me, oh, I am unable to find an editor to do this. And then he asked me, okay, he said, no problem, I will arrange a special issue, no? And then after 1 year, he said me, if you want to get the job of as associate editor to be in the board. And that was my first job. So then I started because I had many connections. My advantage, because I was running many European projects, and because after coming from Holland, and I started to apply for projects in Europe, the project should be with different countries, at least 3 to 4 countries. So I was able to invite many people to the special issue, and then they asked me also if I could go for a book collection, and then everything started slowly. It's a slow career to be editor. I mean, editor-in-chief takes more time, but to be editor is in the beginning that they ask you. At that time was by chance because nobody in this area, there was no special issue on environmental. And he told me, and the first one was I think was published in 1991. I still have it with me because they said, I'm unable to find anybody. But so, this is sometimes is also, I was lucky with this. And then other publishers, they contact you and but it's a slow process. It takes time, but then of course, if you know editors, that there is always a need now with the big publication now, big expansion of publications, mainly from China, because China has exploded. India is also, I think, going. My prediction is that India will be the next country booming in publications, because China in the last 10 years is really a bombardment. But now Indian papers are also much better. So I think with the explosion of India, many editors, many publishers, they need people on the board. That's the reason that that editorial in the last 10, 20 years has really went up very quickly, and there are needs for many editors, reviewers, of course, anything. So it's it's a slow process, but if you know somebody on the board, they can invite you. You start as an editorial board member, then could be an editor, and maybe in the future you can be elected as a editor in chief. So that's.
So editor in chief is through election. It's not like.
Editor in chief is mainly the publisher is screening. When I got the offer, for instance, for Stoten, but Stoten is a different. Stoten, I should say, Stoten, we can treat Stoten separately, because Stoten is the largest journal at this moment in environment in Elsevier. We will hit this year 30,000 submissions, 30,000.
Yeah.
We are publishing 20%. In that case, yeah, the publisher came to me, asked me if I was interested. Usually the editors-in-chief is the Elsevier. They are doing a screening between them, and then sometimes they ask another editor-in-chief suggestions. But usually, to be editor-in-chief, they want to have somebody with experience. But editor-in-chief is not only science; it's a lot of management. Conflicts. I don't know, somebody who really forgot my name in a paper, then there is a conflict with the university. It's not science. I should say 80% of the time is not science at all. It's management. So if you want to do science, it's better to be associate editor, because associate editor only get the paper, but if you are editor-in-chief, you get other things. And Stoten is a separate issue because it's the largest journal, and we are at this moment we are three editors-in-chief. So they are three, because it's only one will be only my time. My time is already occupied a lot. They should be at least 2 or 3. Now, last year we incorporated a third one. So editor-in-chief usually is like that. Of course, there are different journal sizes. I mean, for instance, the new journals, like you publish the journal letters, the hazardous material letters, or these new journals, they expect to publish every year 100 papers or something like that, not more. So in Stoten we publish 6,000 papers. So there are very different sizes of journals. If there is a new journal which is let's say starting, there are more chances for a young guy like you to be editor-in-chief, because it's a new journal, But for the very well established, like Chemosphere or Chemical Engineering Journal, there are several editors. These journals, they are always looking for somebody with a lot of experience. But of course, the experience, if you are editor of another journal or being involved on the board or special issues, is also another way to be involved. It's a step-by-step process, I should say. And it takes time, and usually the appointment is for 3 years. They can renovate, but there is also a limitation on the time, I think. Usually now they say around 10 years. In 10 years, they will need to change most of the editors. So this is and also a new point now in the last years, and it's not good for you or for me, because they prefer now, they want to have 50% females on the board and on the editorial.
Yeah.
So for males, they want to have more females on the board. You will see that now in many journals there is females as associate editors. And
Yeah. I have seen which journal, environmental pollution, or that journal has a lady as editor-in-chief, and that lady is not so, is very young, I would say.
Pollution domain editor-in-chief is in environmental pollution is Eddie Zhang, is a Chinese who was before working for us in Stoten. Stoten is a kind of masterpiece, because we send that to other editors. Eddie Zhang is from China. He's one of the editors-in-chief. But the idea now is to have in hazardous materials also Diana Aga is a female I know her from Buffalo. She is also one of the editors-in-chief. Still, the majority are men. But in the
Mhm.
but the idea of Elsevier is to have this 50% number. But okay, this is also good. I mean,
How to manage editorial responsibilities?
well, my way of working is very simple. Every in the morning, I wake up usually early. I start with the journal, so screening the journal and assigning papers to the editors, because the most important is assigning papers. When I see papers that there is a doubt or they will be rejected, then I assign these papers to me, to myself. But the first thing, let's say I spend a couple of hours in the morning, early morning, to do this, and then I don't do anything else in the journal till late afternoon, till late afternoon. So this is, and then all the papers that I am assigning to myself, usually I have a deeper look during the weekend. Usually I spend 4 days in my box, and then I look. But this is my way of to proceed, because every day in Stoten, every month is 2,500 papers. You can imagine per day is more than 100. But okay, we are in the afternoon, since I have Americans. I don't look to the journal because the other two editors are in the US. So for me, I only look in the morning, which are the Indian, Chinese papers. All the Asian papers are in the morning. And they take care of the afternoon papers, which are European and American. So, and this is my way of usually when if you are an editor-in-chief, if you are an associate editor, when I started, for instance, they told me at least you should look on the weekend. I mean, an associate, many associate editors, which they get, I don't know, maybe 6 papers per week or 1 paper per day. You can go the weekend and do every job, but then you need to spend some time on the weekend. Okay, this is the other way to do it. And I started like this, doing my job in the weekend. This is, and now as editor-in-chief, I need, for Stoten, I need to do this, because otherwise the journal will collapse and the authors will complain, and will complain.
Thumb rules, 1 or 2 trick to manage the conflict.
Well, manage the conflict. No, I got used, and the typical conflict is this is a very common one. A postdoc that was in your lab on my lab and goes abroad, and then we publish a paper without his or her name. Then the postdoc or the person says, okay, this paper was published and my name is not on it. Okay, then I say, okay, well, if you, and then for me the answer is very critical. This is not my responsibility; it's the university responsibility, because the paper, when you submit a paper, is the university or the department. The logo comes from the department. So you should talk with the head of the department and talk about your conflict with them, not with me, because we just publish what we get. Then this is the first point. The second point, what I say, this is very standard, very common in all the journals. Then the second point that I say to him or to her, if your name needs to be added, then it's possible, but you need to have a letter from all the authors with the agreement of all the authors. If one author does not agree, your name will not be included. This happens quite often. For instance, now in a recent paper, they decided to add a new author, or it was also, that can happen. So if everybody agrees, we can add a new author, and then there will be a correction.
But can you do it after publication?
Yeah, because then what we do is we have the paper published, but then this corrigendum is added after, let's say, 1 month, and then is linked. When you click the publication, you see the new names, or you see the old names and the new ones. So for you, the credit for the person this is not a problem. If there is somebody who was missing or there was a mistake, this is a very common conflict. And usually the authors who are not in the paper, they think that Elsevier is the responsible. No, it's not Elsevier, it's the university. Because, we just take, we ask the people to sign, and it's the university who sends the paper. This is a very common. This is one thing. The other thing is about reviewers. The reviewers, let's say, for instance, we got a complaint recently saying that one author, the paper is not yet accepted, but I guess it will be accepted. He said one reviewer is recommending papers which are not relevant and from his own. This is also not very common, but it happens quite often. I said, okay, you as an author, you have the right to answer the questions of the reviewer, but you have also the right not to answer. If you don't agree with this, you just tell the editor will make a decision. I mean, when you see the recommendations of the reviewers, reviewer recommendations. Sometimes they are not good. I saw it. And when I see a reviewer who adds 5 papers of his own group, I delete 4 of them because this is not fair. I mean, this is not a way to increase your impact factor, you know. This is not so. Not very many people is doing this, but some people is doing. Not only from China, India, Europe
No,
as
no, no,
well.
no, no. It's a common problem.
It's a common problem. Not from some. It's not one country. It's different. So I think. So the author, when you see reviewers' comments, you can answer or you can say your opinion, because you know it's not the Bible what the reviewers say. It's not just go the positive. And this is another type of comment that also is. This was coming this morning, by the way, about this conflict. So these are typical issues that come quite often into this. Plagiarism is also another thing. For instance, 2 weeks ago, an author said, this picture is from my own paper, and he sent me the reference. Then I said, and it was not cited, no, typical, no? You said, okay, I look at the picture and it was not the same. You said, you can only complain, and this is a general statement, you can only complain if the picture is exactly 100%. If you make a modification of the picture, it cannot be considered a plagiarism. Only if it's 100% the same figure. And so there is nothing to, and the guy stopped to complain, because he said, this is already known for many years. It should be exactly the same picture.
What was the biggest challenge in your career or research or academic journey so far? Or you say that what are the general challenge also from your own experience? And yeah, first we will get on that.
Well, I think when you start your career, the most important challenge is to get a budget to get a PhD and to get students and to do your work. I mean, this is probably we learned. I learned this quite a lot when I was in the Netherlands, that it was very important to get projects and to get funding and to get in order to do your research. I think this is when you are young. This is the most important, and during many years, we are in Spain, like in everywhere, we are under a lot of pressure for funding, you know, and it's
What is your suggestion for young people is that how can they evaluate their own work and choose journal wisely to save time and energy on multiple rejections and still stay motivated, and whether the rejection, how to take a rejection?
No, I think this is a good point. I think this is important. Here, they need the supervisor to help them, because I was recently, one colleague told me, I want to send this paper to this journal. I said, okay, to Stoten. One colleague was from Emirates, from Middle East. I said, you know, this paper is on engineering, so better you send it to an engineering journal, because Stoten has more pollutants aspect risk assessment. If it's only engineering, pure engineering, there are many good engineering journals. So it's very important to know which journal do you send your research, and either your supervisor, or you can ask one of the editors. I mean, if I am asked, I always answer the questions. For instance, if somebody asks me pure modeling, we will not take it in Stoten. You need to have experimental part, you know. So we have several constraints, and I think it's not. They can ask the supervisor, or they can ask journal editors. In my case, I always respond. I always give an answer. You know, if it's because there are many different journals today and good journals that your research probably fits in one of them. Of course, your supervisor can help you because they have friends, or maybe he's in editorial board of a journal, and they can help you to send you the paper to a given journal. No? But I think it's very important. Yeah? This is. If your paper is rejected, please take the comments seriously and then do something. Let's say first, if the journal is a real fit for your work, this is the most important. If it's not the real fit, then they will tell you also. They will let you know. Sorry.
So I agree with this, and this is a new outlook actually. I was asking this question, and I came to know that yeah, people were advising. But it is clear advice that a supervisor should help, an experienced person should help, but we should also keep in mind that what is our content. Be honest about it. But what is more important for you, an impact factor or the similarity or matching of the information? My supervisor used to say, has they published such work before? If they have published, we should submit. Many times he used to ask, if I prepare any manuscript, the first thing he will ask, what is your target journal? Because unless I don't know which journal you are targeting, I cannot evaluate this manuscript. So what is your take?
Well, Manish, yeah. Well, this is a good question. Well, good question, but has a different answer. So today we have in Elsevier so many journals competing. I mean, your work, for instance, the work that we publish together, could be the Journal of Hazardous Materials. This work could be published exactly the same in Stoten, Chemosphere, Environmental Pollution. You know, there are journals competing for a certain market. So sometimes you say, what is your target? Your target can be different journals. For the reason I told you, the second paper was more treatment. Go to an engineering journal, and a very good one. So this is what, of course, this is one point. So for certain topic like pharmaceuticals in the environment, you have now many journals. So it's unbelievable. I should say the impact factor is not so important, because today all these journals, they have very good one impact factor. So 7, 8, 9. Hazardous material has 10 now, over 10. So, but this is, you know, it's an indication anyway. All these journals, they are in a good place. What you said about the novelty, that's of course the most important part, the novelty. And when I saw the paper of the treatment of the SARS, of the virus, I said, this is new. This is new. You know, there are not many papers on this topic. So novelty is the key point. And this is what do we look at the journal, always on a paper submission paper. If you have a real novelty, your paper will be quickly published, that's for sure, in any good journal. So that's, novelty is the most important. Of course, to do a good literature survey, you need to be aware about what has been done before.
Yeah, that is also a key. I think this one you have highlighted very much.
Well, Manish, this is a very good point. I will tell you what I am doing. This will not happen in Stoten, at least with me.
Yeah.
First, I only reject papers with 2 reviewers recommending rejections, 2 reviewers. But I also have, I should say, first-class reviewers and second-class reviewers. I have reviewers I consider, because some reviewers, you know, I can trust them. Only if there are 2 rejections, I reject. In this case, if it's only 1 rejection, what I do is to send again the paper for revision. And then what I will do is invite in the second revision additional reviewers. You understand? So you will get, if a second reviewer after that recommends rejection, and I trust what they are saying, of course, I believe what they are saying, then I will reject. But not with 1 rejection. My recommendation, not only in Stoten, other journals, they do recommend this, but I know in Stoten that some associate editors, they reject papers with 1 rejection.
Yeah.
But if the author complains and comes to me, I say, this is not possible. This paper should go to another reviewer, because we said in meetings that they should be at least 2 good reviewers, not just, you know, 2 lines saying this is not. But at least we say 2 reviewers. I probably in that case, the editor said, you know, just make it easy.
He asked me, he told, you have to wait another 21 days. I said, no problem. And it went, and then it came, and it is now published. So then this happened. But
we need to be very careful, because some editors, you are right, the same happens I saw it in Stoten, that with only 1 reviewer, they reject. Also, it happened to me with some colleagues sending papers to other journals. Sometimes the editor with only 1 reviewer. Then at this point, I think some editors, they think there are also personal conflicts. They don't tell you, but maybe there is, you know, we don't want this guy in the journal. But you can guess, but it's not fair. It's not professional. We should be professionals. I mean, even if I don't like a person, if only one reviewer says rejection, you should not reject the paper. You need to be professional. You know, it's not
actually
fair.
And when I write rejection, it is more painful. Then I have to write so much. But otherwise, so rejection is a very painful thing. And I have to justify it. Unless until I do not find a critical things highlighting, I cannot reject. For rejecting, and that's what you are right, that two-line rejections is not, whoever you are, you may be Nobel laureate, but that is not the way you can reject a work. It is not suitable. If it is not suitable, editor would have not sent for review. That's all.
Yeah.
One
reviewer is not enough. One reviewer is not, never enough. Never.
So thank you for letting me know this one. I would also try to adopt this technique.
No, I think most of some journals, I think process safety, some journals in Elsevier, they recommended from the publisher. But in Student, I said several times, but it was not in our rules. I talked with the editors, saying, but I think some of them they forgot or they do not agree. I don't know, because not everybody is on the same page, But I think it's the best way to keep, because at the end, we rely on the reviewers and on the authors, because if you are an author today, tomorrow you will be a reviewer, I always do the same thing. I send the papers for review to authors. So if you keep a bad impression to the people, to the customers, at the end the people will not submit papers to the journal. This is like that. There are so many competitors in the market that at the end, yes. Well, I like my job, so I think it's important for new journals, because they know me. They ask me for help. Okay, I said fine. I will help you. So I think it's important. If you like your job, for me, is not too much work. I mean, I had an old friend from the UK who died also a few years ago. He said to me, if you want to do something, if you want something to be done, give it to a busy person. Because if you are doing 10 things, if you are asked to do another one, it's just 10%. If you do only one thing and you are asked to do a second one, it's 50%. So you understand. So when you do so many things, to do an extra one, okay, you say it takes me some time, but you are used. So I think it's good for the network. It's a kind of network, and anyway, I'm not teaching, so I have few students now. I had already 67 PhD students, by the way. So almost six in my life, in my career. So, and I have plenty of time to help with this.
Is that how to keep a good research network, and is it necessary?
No, I think it's necessary in our field. This is the advantage of scientists, because we are not politicians. One of my jobs is also I'm director of the Water Institute, and I need to deal with politicians. These people is totally different. But I mean, the science has no borders, and I think problems of antibiotic resistance in Spain are the same like in India or in China. So I think the networking in our field is possible and is needed. I think, and we can do this because the problems are very similar. It's just and I think people likes to have this. Likes to invite you to have meetings, to have discussions. Okay, and I think
so that is good. But the tricky part is when marriage happens. I mean, when network builds, how to keep it going, how to keep it everybody satisfied, how to keep everybody's ego satisfied and intact. So that I wanted to know.
Yeah. Well, that's like managing a research group. The ego is probably the most difficult part in science, like in many other areas. Everybody wants to study certain chemicals. For instance, in my group, now they are working separately, but at certain moment I had one person working with personal care products, the other one with antibiotics, the other one with anti-inflammatories, but I said at the end, sometimes I said, you need to have a picture of everything. I mean, in the water, there is everything. So you need to collaborate between yourself, not just to split the work, in separate. The problem with the ego is that you can be, of course, your work should be, if you are a microbiologist, your work is important, you will do microbiology. But if you want to correlate this with the chemistry, you need to collaborate with the chemistry. This is what we do in the Catalan Water Institute. From the beginning, when I started in 2008, we said to the young people, we will not accept projects with only one chemist. We should have projects with chemists, microbiologists, chemist engineers. There should be at least two different disciplines in any project. And I think this is a responsibility of the top guys in the institutes to say that, because otherwise we will create separate entities, and it's not good for research. It's not good. It's very bad. I mean, when you, for instance, if you write a very important paper, I don't know, for science or nature, one of these top journals, okay, if it's a microbiology paper, of course the microbiologist will take the lead. But if there are many people involved, then your site is people will be co-author. So I think it's difficult. This is probably the most difficult part, how to keep the individual person or the personality. But it's also important, the collaboration, in order to tackle a problem. Otherwise, you will see only one part. The environment is very complex, and you need all the disciplines. You need hydrologists, you need ecologists, you need everybody. Otherwise, you will not see the vision. You will not have the vision of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, for me is what I have seen is that a good research network produces another network. I mean, if I have one Japanese collaborator and our joint project has produced a lot of results. It is being noticed by other Japanese people or other the Sri Lankan people or so and so forth, and then it grows. So research network is one time it was said that, you know, we are living in a peer reviewing system world. So and that's where research network can help a lot. What do you look into a person and before saying yes for the PhD position or faculty position or otherwise?
Well, Manish, I can say to you overall, when I look at all my PhD students, that it was a kind of lottery. Well, I knew that some of them, yeah, because when you make the first interview a young person, you look at the CV. Sometimes the CV may be good or less good or bad or medium or high, but then it depends on the lab. You don't know the lab. Many of them, they had no lab experience, so I think I should say it's a kind of lottery, I should say. But okay, you can go to the marks if there are good marks. But I was lucky in many cases, but I was also not lucky with other ones, which some very bad students at the end, they did not finish the PhD. So it's very difficult. I think this is when a young person comes to your lab or you need somebody for a project, and then you receive the applications, and then you make a selection on the basis they send the CV, and then we make an interview, a short interview, maybe 20 minutes, and then we'll see. But you know, it's in a way it's a lottery. It should say it's a lottery because you know 4 years. Unless you know the person from one of your. Of course, if you have the recommendation of one of your colleagues, is different, and that's different.
Yeah. I mean, colleague-based recommendation is somehow works, because I know that I am very afraid of not recommending somebody whom I know. Yeah, I can write a good recommendation for all my students to some institute when I am not answerable too much. But if it is within my research network, I would want to make sure whether, because I have some idea what that person might be expecting and what this person has to offer. So the recommendation-based selection may be the very nice idea. Having said that, I can tell you that it is your experience that reflected in your answer that you said that at the end of the day, it is lottery. Actually, yeah.
It's lottery, I think. Most of the cases is lottery.
Yeah. So, I mean, as soon as you said to me, I felt, yeah. It is right. It is right. Because in a 20 minutes interview, how to know that, you know, and CV can backfire you. Many times a very splendid CV can give you very extraordinary headache.